We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall live in peace someday. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
We shall overcome. Wow. That is a message that I feel like Black people have been singing for decades. It's a song that begs the question, when or where is someday, and why haven't we gotten there? Thank you so much, La Cachina, for that beautiful arrangement of one of the most popular protest songs. You can find more information about La Cachina and their work to uplift women in choral music at lacachina.org. Welcome to Hearing in Color's very first virtual concert, Good Necessary Trouble. This evening, we will explore music with messages of protest, liberation, and the Black experience. We'll be joined by some really amazing artists and panelists who will help to contextualize not only this concert, but what it means to be Black and a performing artist today. I feel like it would be completely irresponsible of me to ignore the current social dilemma that we're all experiencing. Not only are we grappling with months of quarantine and a global pandemic, but daily we are reminded that policy, police brutality, and complete dismissal of the Black experience make it nearly impossible to feel safe. Yet, I march on. I still create, and we're still standing. Tonight, it is my hope that you will get a glimpse of just how long we have been fighting to be heard. Music has and remains to be the way that Black people have separated ourselves from our present reality and tapped into the spiritual power given to us by God and our ancestors who fought before us. This next performance is offered by DMV native and New York-based artist Amaya Holly. I hope that you all really enjoy her performance. Please enjoy Stand Up by Cynthia Erivo.
I've been walking with my face turned to the sun. Weight on my shoulders, bullet in my gun. Oh, I got eyes in the back of my head, just in case I have to run. And I do what I can when I can for my people. While the clouds roll back and stars fill the night, that's when I'm gonna stand up. Take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home. Far across the river, can you hear freedom calling, calling us to answer? Keep on moving on. I can feel it in my bones. Early in the morning, as the sun begins to shine, we're gonna start moving towards that separated line. Oh, I'm wading through muddy water, 'cause I got a made of mine. And I don't mind if I lose any blood on the way to salvation. And I'll fight with the strength that I got until I die. That's when I'm gonna stand up. Take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home. Far across the river, can you hear freedom calling, calling us to answer? Gonna keep on moving on. And I know what's beyond the pen. across the river, can you hear freedom calling? Calling us to answer. Keep on moving on. Yeah, sing my people. Far across the river, can you hear freedom calling? You gotta press on and keep on moving on. Yeah, you gotta keep on. You gotta move. You gotta move. We gotta go to a new home. I go to prepare a place for you. I go to prepare a place for you. Prepare a place for you. I go to prepare a place for you.
Thank you so much, Amaya, for an incredibly powerful song and performance. Speaking of taking my people with me, I would love to welcome tonight's panelists who happen to be really, really great friends of mine and amazing artists in their own rights. I'd love to introduce Kedrick and Kyle and Yelly. How y'all doing?
Blessed, doing good.
All right, hanging in there.
I know that's right. I feel that. So tell us about yourselves. Let's get some introductions so that the people know who you are. Who wants to go first?
I'll start. Hi, my name is Kedrick Armstrong. I am originally from Georgetown, South Carolina, but currently reside in the Chicagoland area out in the suburbs. I am a conductor. I work at First Presbyterian Church of Wheaton as their music and worship director and also as a freelance conductor, and praise Jesus that I can still work in this time. So that is who I am.
Yes. Kyle?
All right, well, I'm Kyle Dixon. I'm originally from Detroit. I've been in Chicago for about 6 years now. I did my master's at DePaul in violin performance, and I've been freelancing here since then. I'm currently the music director of the South Loop Symphony. I'm the assistant conductor of the Southside Chicago Youth Symphony and also of the chamber orchestra at Northwestern University, where I'm doing my master's in orchestral conducting. And also, I am a project inclusion conducting fellow, like Kedrick, with the Chicago Sinfonietta.
Nice. Yelly.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yelly. I am a musician and writer from Oakland, California. I am currently the artistic director and violist for Decomposed, which is a Chicago-based chamber music experience that honors Black creativity and culture through the music of Black composers. And I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much, Rob, for putting this amazing concert together.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining me. I think when I thought about putting this concert together, I was like, I need some people who are going to be real and really talk about what's going on and what it means to be Black and what it means to be a performing artist right now. So I'm really, really happy that I reached out to y'all and that y'all were like, duh. So let's go ahead and just jump right in with a question. I have to ask y'all, how are we doing? How are we feeling? There's a lot happening right now. I know that there are a lot of emotions, but how are we doing?
That's a question.
Yeah.
I think we're all trying to find the answer to that in our own ways. And I think the more that I talk to people about, how they're doing these days, the more and more varied the answers are, right?
Hmm.
There's so many people that, kind of thrive in a situation where, there's, the world has come to an end and they can just sort of, or come to a stop and they can relax. And then you have people that have a hard time with that. And then it's just the emotional turmoil of the summer and everything that's been going on it's a lot to pair.
Yeah, definitely. Um,
As I think about that question, I
mm,
think, how I'm doing is like a constant conversation with self. I think one of the big things about being a Black person in classical music right now is that, at least for me, I'm consistently asking myself, okay, is it worth it to keep fighting in these systems that are like just not doing it? Or should I just like jump ship and go build something new with my, and it's like you're constantly in this place of like trying to figure out like where you have been called to and where you best work, because I
mm,
truly believe some people are called to like I work at an all-white Presbyterian church, and right now I feel like that is where I need to be. But I have to be honest, there's days when I'm like, it's hard. It is
yeah.
really hard.
Yeah. Yeli?
Um, I can't say with any certainty how I'm doing, but I can say that it's very intimately tied to what I'm not doing.
Mm,
And I think what I'm not doing varies by the day. That means the conversations that I'm not having, the spaces that I'm not participating in. All of those are somehow tied to how I'm doing, and it
right.
changes on the day. And I would say at this point, I'm being very, very careful about what I am allowing myself to be, where I'm allowing myself to be, and what's nourishing me and what's not nourishing me. I'm pretty much trying to shut the whole world out, because I know it's a very, very sensitive time. And I think we often think about what's happening with us in our physical world and our emotional world. But I'm really, really trying to stay connected and remember that this is also impacting all of us spiritually, right? And knowing that what is going to be the best for my spirit in this moment. And I know for a lot of that, it ties to what I'm not doing. It means not engaging with social media. It means not trying to prove to people that we deserve to be here, not trying to argue, just being where I am.
Right.
Because that's protest too. It's just being where you are and getting up every day and allowing yourself to feel how you need to feel. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think all of these are excellent points and exactly kind of where I am. And, thinking about how to formulate even this concert, the biggest question that I had for myself was, what is protesting to me? What does protesting look like to me? And what does it feel like to me as a Black artist? Have you guys had an opportunity to think about that at all? Like in this time specifically, obviously with so much going on, how does it feel to protest with your art even right now, if that's something that you're doing? Hard hitters.
Well, right before right before this panel, of course, I had to, hit up the internet and look at what the definitions of protest
Mm,
are. And the word that kept coming up consistently is to object,
mm,
right? And I've been thinking about all the ways that we object, and simply by continuing to create. And it doesn't necessarily matter what that creation is, but by continuing to create, that in itself is an objection to this idea that we do not deserve space, that we cannot be here, that we do not have the brilliance and the artistry to speak for ourselves.
mm-hmm.
And so that's really sitting with me is what are we objecting to, and how we object in so many ways, every single moment of our lives.
Right. Yeah. Anyone else?
I feel as if I'm constantly trying to find ways to find answers to that question. Like, what is protest to me? How am I moving the needle in my role as a conductor, as an educator? And to me, uh, this system of privilege and exclusion is rampant in our genre of music, and so we have to remind ourselves, our audiences, our students, our colleagues, that this is not the case, that there are Black voices in our field, and we have to. And I feel as if, as a conductor, to be a talking head for these composers that are left to the wayside, is a form of protest. And, refusing to only program, the Beethovens and the Brahms in looking past the William Grant Stills and the Coleridge Taylors and the Prices. If we continue to be advocates for ourselves in this art, I feel like that is a way for protesting as a musician and as a conductor, for sure.
Yeah, I think Yeli kind of hit it right on the head with, what am I objecting? How am I kind of being whole within myself and then just being me and creating me? And I think that's such an important part of what we're all experiencing right now, is just bringing my full self to my art and to my craft and into the world, and not feeling like I am burdening the masses because I am experiencing whatever I'm experiencing, or this is the way that I show up. And I think I've found, especially in these past few months, but certainly over the past few years, that it is much more important for me to feel like I can show up my full self, especially in the spaces that we often find ourselves in, which are largely not like us. That it's much more important for me to bring my full self to that environment and to my art. Yeah.
And that space will be so much better off because you're able to do that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, well, we're there. We're going right in, y'all. So I guess with that, I'm gonna go ahead and transition to the next piece. I hope that everybody is sitting down. If we're talking about showing up, our whole selves, I really, really want you all to sit down and really digest this poetry that will go forth right now. This is If We Don't Come Home, written and performed by Makita Loney.
I was born with skin that fits like a body bag. It was like being born black meant being born to die. Some days, my body resembles a casket. Brown wood, a soul that's full, once feeling so hollow. On the inside, I am dressed in what I consider my daily best. A pair of leggings, a t-shirt, a bandana, a wig depending on the day, because I was taught to dress like I'll always run into my worst enemy. A Karen, with a complex so big she thinks she could fight God themselves, asks to speak to their manager about why I'm taking up space on her earth. A young man with a rifle, traveling miles to make his country proud by shedding the blood of the people that he disagrees with. Another perfect stranger with a badge and a loaded gun thanks him for his service. I was born into a war I wasn't prepared to fight. But we know how to run into battle with nothing to protect us, because even something as simple as using our voices can sentence us to death. Being drafted twofold. Our uniforms, the skin we were born in. The second, a chilling coldness that takes out the warmest of souls. Toy guns and a $20 bill are enough of a reason for us to not make it home. And so, we march on. Hands up. Please don't shoot. We already know hatred that has pierced our hearts hundreds of times. Signs up. I wish I knew how to search for humanity in your eyes. I wish I could teach you how to find it in mine. Hearts open. Though they are filled with rage, I want to let those who have found themselves struggling to even spare a beat find a home in my rhythm, even when I am tired of fighting. Besides yearning for justice, for those of us ripped from this earth too soon, besides the yearning for basic decency and humanization of my people, besides the yearning to just feel normal, I have one more request. If we don't come home from this war, tell our mothers that they birthed fighters of a revolution, fought for her and the many hers that came before her, and for the many hers that come after that won't get to be mothers because there is no space for nurturing in brutality. If I don't come home from this war, tell them to bury me as I am, with a pocket full of glitter and a heart full of gold, shaped by the whispers of my friends, past lovers, the distant memory of my brother who inherited the face of my father. All I got was his fight, and though the trench between us is vast, I still fight for him. If we don't come home from this war, don't call us brave for acting on the behalf of our humanity. Some think of it as walking into certain death. I see it as trying to fight for survival. If we don't come home from this war, light a candle in the shape of our cities. Leave it at the altar and watch it burn. Because none of this was ours to keep anyways.
Get up, stand up,
Get up, stand up,
stand up for your rights.
stand up for your right.
Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Oh, get up, stand up.
Get up, stand up,
Stand up for your rights.
stand up.
Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Preacher man, don't tell me heaven is under the earth. I know you don't know what life is really worth.
What life is really
They say all that is glitter is gold.
Go.
Half the story ain't never been told. So now you see the light. Hey, hey, stand up for your rights. Oh, get up, stand up.
Get up, stand up,
Stand up for your rights.
stand up, stand up.
Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Oh, get up, stand up.
Get up, stand up.
Stand up for your rights.
Stand up for your right.
Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Tamir Rice, Freddie Gray, Elijah McClain, Yvette Smith.
Starting war, screaming peace at the same time. All the corruption, injustice, the same crime. Always a problem if we do or don't fight, then we die. We don't have the same rights. What is a gun to a man that surrenders? What's it gonna take for someone to defend us? If we all agree that we're equal as people, then why can't we see what is evil? I can't breathe.
I can't breathe.
You're taking my life from me. I can't breathe.
I can't breathe.
Will anyone fight for me? Oh, 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 oh. Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. McLean, Yvette Smith.
Huge shout out to music. Those are my friends, my girls. You can check them out. Check out to music on Instagram at We Are to Music. Find their most recent EP on all streaming platforms. Shout out to Suitland BPA program, high school in Maryland. I know y'all out there. Thank y'all so much for supporting. Yeah. So, y'all. We touched on this a little bit, but I think we have to get into it. I think all of us here are a part of a very Eurocentric art form by some way, shape, form, or fashion, which in many ways is representative of the world that we live in, which is very white-centered. And it seems like the world that we live in has started to open its eyes up a little bit to the injustices that are and have been going on since forever against Black bodies and Black people. And I know I personally have seen so many statements from different companies, different organizations saying, we care, Black Lives Matter, we want to do better, help us do better. How are we requiring these art institutions to hold space for us? How are we holding them accountable? What if that is necessary? Ketty said earlier, you know, maybe it's time for us to just let some of these institutions go. How are we feeling about that?
If I can just jump in right away, I think I could say so much about how these institutions have revealed a lot about themselves over the last few months. But I think last few months is in like decades.
Right.
But I will say that what I'm really sitting with is their insistence on talking about, for those who are even courageous enough to say racism, or courageous enough to say anti-Blackness, or courageous enough to say white supremacy, how they can do that and then continue to insist on speaking on our behalf or acting on our behalf. It doesn't make sense to me, because they insist on acting on our behalf as if they actually know us. And so with all the statements and all of the promises and all these timelines, I'm like, but you don't know us. And so it comes back to this understanding and knowing that we love ourselves more than they can even conceive of. We also know ourselves more than they can conceive of, because they didn't even see us until what, this year? And so the fact that people can continue to run organizations or lead efforts on behalf of a community that they do not know or understand is mind-boggling to me. When we talk about dismantling white supremacy, that looks like moving over and acknowledging that looking over and acknowledging that you don't know us, and therefore you are not equipped to do anything on our behalf, really. Yeah. Not with the expertise, not with the care, not with the love, and not with the passion, and not with the knowledge that we can. And so it doesn't, I mean, and I'm sure that there are people who have the experience, and but at this point it's not just about experience and running orchestras or experience and this or that. It's about having people who know what the truth is.
Yeah.
And not know it because they read it in a book, or started with George Floyd, who've known it because it's part of our experience every day, knowing it's because it's part of our parents and our grandparents. And so that's when I read those statements, I just ask that question, like, what makes you think that you can do it better than us?
Right.
And the answer is you can't.
Right. Yeah, I certainly think that when we think about this experience, what I've seen is a lack. There's a difference between inclusivity and equity. And I think that the conversation needs to really shift so that we're really focusing on equity. And to your point, Yeli, like, nobody wants to get out of the seat. Nobody wants to give up that little bit of power for the sake of somebody else who has an experience that can really channel and change and move us forward. For the sake of keeping the status quo or keeping tradition or whatever it is, there is such a refusal almost to give up the power and allow for other experiences to take the seat. And that's kind of what I'm seeing in my day-to-day experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Yali.
Nope, go ahead, Kedrick.
I was gonna say, I think, to piggyback on both of those comments, right? We're talking about an allyship, something that costs, right? You have to give up something in order to participate in doing this work. And so many people are putting out these statements and they want to hold on to the wealth, they want to hold on to the power that they have, gathered, and they don't want to give up anything. And I think, as I'm entering this conversation, I'm constantly looking at like the totality of our field, right? So many times when we talk about doing the work of diversity, equity, inclusion, champion Black voices and Black music, it really stops at the concert stage, right? And the classical music industry is so much larger than what happens on that stage, right?
Right.
No one's calling recording companies, no one's calling publishing houses, right? Like the people who really built this kind of Eurocentric brand of classical music that is in America, right? When we have scores and scores and scores of some of the most brilliant Black composers like sitting in archives because publishing houses have never deemed to publish it. And then we wonder why these orchestras and these like companies aren't programming this music. So much of it is like stashed away and under these outrageous copyright laws, right? And we can't even begin to unearth the brilliance of Black classical music because y'all gatekept it all this time.
Right. Ooh. Gatekeeping.
Well, and going back off of Kedrick, there's also not just the publishing, but I'm thinking about the people who create our perception of the classical world. And that's going to be radio, right? Radio and the people who are writing about concerts, and when you're writing about concerts, you're coming from a particular lens, a particular cultural aesthetic, right? And so what does it mean to have Black folks, shout out to Garrett McQueen, okay,
right.
First of all, speaking of Black classical folks in radio, Garrett McQueen, but like they're hearing our voices talking about this music is also incredibly important. And to hear our writing about, orchestral performance or soloists, right? Based on our cultural aesthetics too. How does that change how people perceive what classical music is? And I think, yes, of course it happens in the organizations, but I think those parts are really important as well, because they build our perception of what this is, who belongs, all types of things.
Right. Yeah, I think it's certainly in the work that I am doing with Hearing in Color is exactly to counter that. It's to stop tokenizing the Black song, stop putting Moses Hogan at the end of the concert as the choir showpiece, stop adding a spiritual to the concert during, Black History Month. It's to take out those kind of tokenized ways of looking at our music and celebrating it and giving it the stage that it deserves. Because to your point, Ketty, it exists and it's beautiful. And we don't need to qualify it any further. It's not beautiful because it's Black. It's not beautiful because it exists. It's there. Therefore, it should be performed. And we should stop like hiding it under this guise of, well, it's not Black History Month, so we shouldn't perform this Florence Price orchestra, like program the music, put it on the stage, highlight it, give it the space it deserves. And I think all of us, especially on here, have really kind of protested in a way through the work that we do to make sure that Black music is continuously heard, and not just as like this tokenized idea, but as the music that really needs to be appreciated.
I also, as you're speaking, the phrase obviously that comes to mind is the white gaze. And I think that there's an amazing interview of Toni Morrison talking about her writing not taking into consideration the gaze of white people. And that we have our stories and our worlds, and they are worth sharing and telling in totality. And I think what the classical music world, it's defined by the white gaze, right? And so how do you disrupt and put things on stages and write? I think we have to talk about what it looks like to do that. We'll do what Toni Morrison did, do what so many Black authors did, and so many Black artists have done, is to say, like, you exist, but you are not a part of, I am not doing this for you. I am not doing this to please you. I'm not even doing this with the awareness of you in the room. There's also an extended clip of YouTube of Nina Simone introducing Young, Gifted, and Black. And she's basically like, white people, I wasn't even thinking of you when I wrote this song. Like, you can think what you want, but you haven't been considered. And I think that's what, when I think of protest and objection, it's creating a world where, like, y'all are considered. And I think that's what I've been listening to, a lot of gospel music, and I've been thinking about how beautiful it is, and the fact that it evolved outside of the white gaze. Right? It is so pure and so precious, is because we created it by ourselves and our churches, without input, without criticism, without any of that. And so how do we take that kind of creation and inspiration and just like love for ourselves when we put things on stages, but also can we require another group to do that for us?
Yeah.
Can they do it? I don't know. I mean, I would say no. Honestly, which is why Decomposed exists. I mean, you know, it's this idea that we tell our stories. We should tell our stories. And if other people want to tell our stories, they need to do so with reverence, respect, information, knowledge. And I mean, sometimes like permission. I don't know.
Period. You're not finna speak for me. No,
please don't.
That's so real.
We are here. Period.
Yeah, and you have to remember too that the discussion of inclusion, like among orchestral organizations, arts organizations, this is not a new conversation, right?
Wait, like, AKA, can we go back and say that before 1960 that was called integration? Like, this is a really kind of new and flashy word.
Say it one more time.
Integration, and if they said integration, they would be like, ah! Clutch the pearls, right? So I want every white person who wants to say inclusion, right? Say integration and see how that sits on your tongue. Ooh. Because then it really shows what's really happening. It's a really ugly injustice that actually is rooted in this society. But we want to talk about integration when it's about social shit. The social world. But when we want to put it in the classical, we want to rebrand it and repackage it so it doesn't make people feel so bad. So we say inclusion. But when you talk about inclusion, that means that there are people who have permission to let people in and out of the room. And those people are white. So I'm sorry, Kyle. I'm gonna stop. Go ahead.
I mean, I can't follow up with that. Like, I can't.
No, you said. I'm sorry, I really cut you off.
No, it's so right. And then you have to ask these organizations, like, what do you mean by inclusion? Like, what are you doing? How are you including? Why do you have to include? It's gotten, I mean, Black folks are getting tired of asking for permission.
And
Black folks are tired of asking for an invitation, you know? And that ship has sailed. And these organizations are going to have to, there's going to be a reckoning where they're going to realize that we've begun our own organizations, we've started our own initiatives, we've begun supporting our own artists, we've begun presenting our own artists, and it doesn't have to be through the podium that you set it on. It doesn't have to be the pedestal that you decided now is finally this is relevant, this is important for other people to. You don't get to decide that. We've created our own spaces so that we can be the ones to decide that for ourselves.
Yeah.
Can
I
I
think.
just
Go ahead.
I just want to say, people giving out invitations. And the wild thing is that some of these organizations are inviting us to things that we don't like. I don't find value in this. Like, you're extending these invitations as if we want to be a part of some of these tables or a lot of these tables. I don't want to eat this food. Don't invite me to your dinner party.
Come on.
And tell me that it's an honor.
This unseasoned chicken.
It ain't got no salt.
I do not want to eat this.
No, that's
And
so
then
real.
When we get to the table, they're like, actually, like, this is the table, but you can sit over there in the corner at the kids' table. Hell nah.
Right.
Like, don't give me that invitation. I reject that invitation. I reject that room. I reject that door that's closed. Right? So there's so many issues about when we talk about the consolidation of power in these institutions. It's really rested on their ability to continue to decide and to hand out invitations and to open and close doors and to give us just enough so that people stop fighting so hard and say, hey, we've made some progress. Right. And it's like, it's actually not enough because you're continuing to make the decisions. You continue to have millions and millions of dollars that you get to decide when and where you want it to go. And that's the problem. And, nobody's going to prioritize Black people like Black people.
That part. And I want to kind of touch on one thing before we move on. You mentioned, Yeli, this idea of white gaze, and in thinking about my own programming, this is why I needed to include different aspects of protest music in this specific concert, because like you said, that music was not created for the white gaze. It was birthed out of experience, and it existed as it existed. It wasn't for anybody to see it and then maybe consider anything. It was, this is my experience. This is my story. I'm going to tell it. So songs like Stand Up by Cynthia Erivo, songs like I Can't Breathe by her, or Bob Marley's Get Up, Stand Up. These are important songs and messages that weren't for the white gaze. It was literally, I need to tell my story in this way, and whoever hears it will hear it, but this is what comes out of me. And I think, to my point earlier about Black people always being able to tap in to that something, that spirit, that the ancestor, that God in us, that really allows us to tell our story in this divine way. And it was, to put a pin on it, it was so important that I included that music. So shout out to Amaya, shout out to Music, shout out to Makita for writing that lovely poetry, and honest poetry, because these are the stories that need to be heard. The ones that are honest and raw, and the ones that hurt, and aren't considering who's listening, but really just how I feel. Whew. All right. We are just, wow. Okay. Thank you all so much for tuning in with us thus far. Right now, we're going to need a brief intermission after all of that. So go and grab your drinks, get up and stretch. If you feel uncomfortable, great. If you have any questions, feel free to add them to the comments. We'll try and address some questions when we come back from intermission. Thank you all so much. Thank you to my panelists. Thank you to the artists. And we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. We are here at Hearing in Colors, Good Necessary Trouble, which is our very first virtual concert and panel discussion. I am LaRob Payton, the artistic director for Hearing in Color. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight in discussion. Lots to talk about, clearly. But first, I want to welcome, we have a special guest who is joining our panel discussion. Thank you so much, Corey, for being here. I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. My name is Corey Coleman. I'm the founder and executive director of Decompose. Outside of Decompose, I'm a creative strategist for both experiential and digital strategy. And I'm a graduate of Spelman College. So happy HBCU week to all the HBCU people out there. And I'm just really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. We are deep in the convos, and we actually have a question from the comments that we got during the intermission. So I'll pose this question to you all now. When presenting authentic voices of color, how do private white institutions understand and avoid when they are appropriating other cultures?
Okay, I guess I'll go. I think the best way, if you don't understand, I think it's showing that you don't know. So if you don't know, it's always important to make sure you have the right people in the room. So for example, let's say you want to make sure you're not appropriating Black culture. Do you have Black voices in the room? Are Black voices given the opportunity to speak up and lead and kind of direct that programming? And if you don't have those voices, maybe reconsider if you should be doing it.
Period, point blank, full stop.
And I think that brings up a very interesting point of reconsidering, because I think, there's often this conversation, and I'm going to talk specifically about predominantly white choral programs doing spirituals, because that's like the first thing I think of in my mind, right? If you're a predominantly white institution with no Black people in your choir, you don't have to do the spiritual. Right? If you're not going to authentically honor the tradition, if you're not going to do the work to like find that, that Black music director, there's someone in your town who's a pro at this, bring them into your choir, have an honest conversation about the text, the meaning about this music, then don't do it, right? Like, I would rather the piece not be done than to be, like LaRob said earlier, slapped at the end of the program, right? And I see these choirs singing these like slave songs as celebrations at end of programs. And it's like, but you say you're doing the work of, it's like, it's so jarring.
Yes. Anyone else? I mean,
I think it's really interesting. And I want to just remind everyone that the internet exists. And I think people forget that you can really research things, that there are people who have probably studied some form of this that you can find on the internet, that you can pay to pay to give you insight on it. And I think too, when we think about music of other cultures, it's not in a world of white supremacy, they're not treated with the same kind of value, right? When people go up and play Brahms and Mozart and Bach, you got scholars on it. You know that there are wrong ways to do this. And you're not just going to ask any musician, how do you play Bach? No, you would ask somebody who's studied Bach, who knows what the style is. And so this idea too, that you can ask anybody, you can just ask any Black person, you can ask any person of color how this thing is supposed to go. It doesn't work like that. These are art forms that have evolved, that need to be studied, that have contexts. And I think it's much more than, the basics of how to perform it or how does it sound, like when there's so much context that not everyone is equipped
right
to share with you. So do your research, but also pay people who have done this research already. And if you feel like it's not within the scope of what you can do, then don't do it. Right? I mean, that's just my advice.
Y'all running a Beethoven every other day.
I'm saying, how many 250th anniversaries are we gonna get?
250,000.
I'm just gonna keep it real. But no, these are excellent points. I mean, that's pretty much it. If there's nobody in the room, why are you performing it? What's your point?
And I guess I think that's important to question your motives.
Mm-hmm.
Like to really, really question why you're doing it, who you're doing it for,
mm-hmm.
And what the goal is of whatever. And then that's for programming generally. But I think specifically when you're programming things that are unfamiliar to you, particularly during a moment where people are just like, let's just throw Black people stuff on stages.
Right.
Like to really be critical of yourself in terms of motivation.
Yeah, and thank you for saying programming, period, because I'm really tired of the conversation that, oh, we're doing this because it's, it's a classic. We've just been doing it. What is your motivation for doing this piece? And part of my motivation for doing this concert is that as an artist, as the great Nina Simone has said over and over again, it's my duty as an artist to respond to the times that I'm experiencing. I need to make sure that whatever I'm putting out, my art, that I am responding to what I'm experiencing. And I think that there are so many ways that you can do that in classical programming that people just are not taking advantage of. We could be having the conversations that we all want to have if people would just move over, honestly. So yes.
Takes a bit of reflection, and I mean the hubris of some of these organizations to just assume that they can speak for us, It's unreal.
Yep. Yeah. Great. Thank you for answering that question from the audience. So I have one little question, and this is kind of getting more into the more of being a Black person and our experience. What is it about Blackness, do y'all think, that requires us to keep moving forward? What is it about Blackness that strengthens us to keep moving forward? What do you feel connected to that allows us to do what we do? I'm sorry, y'all.
Can you say that again?
Will, can, and shall. What is it about Blackness that requires us to keep moving? Or what is it about Blackness and our experience that strengthens us to keep moving?
I think my favorite thing about Blackness is, I think in general, we come from an incredibly powerful lineage. So it feels like when you see all these people who have been these greats and have created this great work, I don't see how we wouldn't want to be a part of that legacy. But also Black people within our veins and just within our history, it's always been about resilience and kind of overcoming and creating something out of nothing. And that's kind of what pushes me to move forward. It's like there's so many examples of people who have done it. There's so many examples of people who I could turn to and say that it's possible. That I think that's what pushes me to move forward, is knowing that I come from such a strong lineage of people.
Right.
And it's within our blood.
And to look at all of the things that they were able to accomplish when you consider every obstacle that Black people have had to face. I mean, it would be absurd to throw away all of that work. You don't have to look far to see how far we've come and to be inspired to continue that work.
Yeah.
I think what strengthens me is just looking around at how beautiful Black people are, not just here in the US, but like the diaspora across, across the world. I think that it's strengthening to see how we create and how we move and how all of our ties to our homeland are present throughout the diaspora in the way that we move, in the way that we speak, in the way that we blend things, in the way that we create in spite of. I think also for me, it's looking at in my own family what strength looks like.
Mm.
And taking that and moving forward and redefining what strength means, taking what's very tangibly in my blood and moving forward from there. And just really, when we talk about protesting, it's objecting this idea that we're not.
Mm.
I just like objected. So that's that.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah, I think the thing for me these days personally, what pushes me so hard is my own personal knowledge that assimilation is easy. And I think in our field, and in a lot of fields, like I know for myself, like when I was in my undergrad, like assimilation was something that I saw as like a necessary survival technique, right? Like looking back at all of the like Blackness within myself that I dismissed for this dream of being a professional classical musician, and how now I'm having to undo a lot of this training is kind of this awakening moment for myself of like, it's that ingrained into this field that I myself, a Black man from the South, like didn't listen to hip hop music because I saw that as like not on the same level of this like Mozart and Bach that I was studying at the time. And so having gone through that personal mind shift in myself, it's become even more like apparent that like the sound of Black people is incredible, right? And as an artist, as someone who's been like given the gift of creating music, like I feel like every time I get on stage to conduct, to do anything, like I am taking all of Black music with me, right? All of that experience is standing on that stage with me, right? And that is kind of the push to keep going, right? Because it's not just about Black people and classical music, right? It's about the sound of Black people being represented and being given the platform.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I just had a conversation with somebody not too long ago about what music feels like for me. What is it about music that why am I doing this? And I think we've each had individual conversations about this too. I grew up in church, and there was something about what was happening in church when people were singing that it was like, that is what I want to experience all the time with music, period. There was such communication going on between the person who was on stage, emoting, hollering, that I just was like, from a very young age, I became connected to whatever that was. And we know what it is. And like, that's what I want to bring with me when I'm singing, when I'm program music, when I'm listening to music. I want to experience that. And I realized that it exists in all genres of music. It exists everywhere. And we can find ourselves connected to it all the time if we so take the moment to really feel it and be connected to it. And I think that for me is what strengthens me to keep moving on, what strengthens me to keep being Black. And like you said, Ketty, it's so easy to assimilate and, be the robotic thing that kind of just keeps moving out of necessity. But there's so much more than that in Blackness, and more than that in especially Black music.
Sorry, because it's come up several times. Can I say a point?
Please.
When we talk about assimilation, it's that it's expected.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that we're doing voluntarily.
Right.
It's something that in a lot of these institutions, it's required of us. And I think the reason, at least for me, in the moments where I engaged in that behavior, it felt so damaging and violent is because it's actually in contrast with, you know, in my experience, the cultural ways of making music, the cultural ways of interacting with people. The idea how you talked about church, you know, people don't go to church to perform.
Right.
We don't perform in church.
Right.
You go to church to use your voice or your instrument to connect back to yourself, to connect to the people who are participating in it with you, right? Because when somebody's up there singing, you're not outside of it, you were in it with them.
Yeah.
Right. So to connect all of these things, and that was the purpose of music. It wasn't art for art's sake. It was expression to elevate all of us, to elevate everyone, to connect to everyone. And when I felt that assimilation to me was to detach that understanding of music and spirit and to turn it into performance.
Yeah.
Where the goal was entirely different. And I think that, you know, what I find strength in now is rejecting that aesthetic and those values when it comes to music making. And like you said, Rob, rooted in the purpose of it. And I think that's what music is so powerful. Why do you think it was, you know, outlawed for Black people to get together and make music? Precisely because of its power to bring people together, to connect us, to give us strength.
Yeah.
And so to rely on that, I think, is extremely powerful, and rely on the way that we have done it, not the way that we are being told to do it, permitted to do it, or just to do it for ourselves outside of that white gaze, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah, that's it. I think you've said it quite elegantly. I just got a notification. We got another question from the audience. An interesting one, I'll admit, but I'll pose it for, you know, we'll transition after this question. This question is, has anybody on this panel witnessed a private white institution who has done it in a better way?
What's the it?
What is it?
I'm assuming, I think the it is like tending to cultural music, tending to Black music. Have you witnessed an institution that is white specifically that has done a decent job?
I will say this. I will give props where props are due.
Okay.
For me, as a, 21, 22-year-old, Black musician coming from like Wheaton College, and keep in mind, when I graduated from Wheaton College in 2016, I was the only Black student in the School of Music. Like there were no other Black people in the School of Music. We did a performance of Haydn's Creation with 300 people on stage, and like the lone Black clarinet player sitting in the orchestra was me, right? So leaving that environment and going to a place like Chicago Sinfonietta that actually valued my Blackness, for me in that point of time was like life-changing, because never before in my life had I had an organization tell me that like, you can go on stage and be a full-fledged Black person. Like you can bring all of that with you on stage, and all of that is actually what makes you stronger. Mm-hmm. So for me at that time in my life, Chicago Sinfonietta was truly kind of life-changing and shifting that dynamic for me. But like I said, that is a very personal story for myself.
Yeah. I love us so much. Needless to say, there is work that needs to be done. There's so much work that needs to be done. And like we've said before, if you are not ready to have the voices and the people and the experiences in the room, then you are not equipped to do a good job at it. You are setting yourself up for failure by not including these experiences in the conversations, in the programming, in the decision-making rooms. So I think we all feel good about. Amen. So this next stretch of music really takes a reflective, yet a direct examination of the Black experience. With poetry from Langston Hughes, we contemplate what it means even today to be Black in a world that fails to see and celebrate you. We'll hear an incredible interpretation of the ever so popular Strange Fruit, made famous by Billie Holiday, that unfortunately, given the countless lynched under this racist system that we're all living, still rings very, very true today. And then we'll close with a few pieces written by my good friend, Steve Wallace, including a setting of Paul Laurence Dunbar's famous We Wear the Mask poem. I couldn't think of a more pertinent poem today. So I hope you all enjoy this next bit of music. Yeah, enjoy.
Lovely dark and lonely one, bare your bosom to the golden sun. Do not be afraid of light, you who are a child of light. Open wide your arms to life. Whirl in the wind of pain and strife. Face the wall with the dark closed gate. Beat with tireless hands and wait. Wait. Lovely dark and lonely one, bare your bosom to the sun. the poplar trees. Pastoral scene of the gallant South. The bulging eyes and the twisted mouth, scent of magnolia, sweet and fresh, and the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to sigh, for the sun to rot, for a tree to drop. Here is a strange and bitter crop. did not know that life could be so sweet. I did not know the hours had speed so fleet till I knew you, and life was sweet again. The days grew brief with love and lack of pain. I was a slave a few short days ago. The power of kings and princes now I know. I would not be again in bondage, save I had your smile, the liberty I crave. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This that we paint a human guile, with tears and bleeding hearts we smile, and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let the lonely see us smile. We wear the mask. We smile, but all we cries to thee. From tortured souls arise. We sing, but all the clay is vile. Beneath our feet and along the mile. But let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask.
Thank you so much, John, Camille, Leah, Tiana, for your amazing gifts. Thank you so much to North Shore Baptist Church for allowing us, under the safest precautions, to record in such a beautiful and familiar space. And thank you to George Preston and Josh Salvaggio from WFMT for their support with equipment and assistance there. I really can't say thank you enough. We're back, panel. I actually wanted to share the words of a friend and composer, Joel Thompson, amazing composer in his own right. But he made a post recently in response to what we all experienced this week. And I think for me, this is a really true sentiment, and I couldn't have mustered these words better. So I'm just going to share his words. For so long, I have believed in the experiment of American democracy. Inspired by the loving patriotism of Douglass, King, Chisholm, and Baldwin, I believed that the dissonant friction between our professed values and our reality would eventually resolve into a most sonorous harmony. I believe that the conscience of America would awaken and see its rot and surrender to grace. Now I know that in your eyes, the neighbor's wall was worth more than the life of Breonna Taylor. I know that it is easier for you to find excuses to justify her death than to seek accountability for the theft of a beautiful, precious, just blooming life. I know that all consuming violent rage is not the answer, but America, you keep asking what happens when we perpetuate physical, mental, and emotional torture, murder, and dehumanization of Black people over generations while claiming to be the architects of liberty for all. Well, what do you think? You want the sweet, sweet sound of the blues, America. You want us to dance and sing despite your treachery. You want an Amber Geiger hug. You want us to cling to the divine nature of forgiveness while you wallow in a pit of unrepentant hate. You want us to rise from the ashes of this gaslit furnace, yet stay burning so we can keep you warm. No, you will hold space for my indignation as I hold space for your soul sickness every day. America, I can't keep begging you to yield to your own humanity while you're addicted to the honeyed ambrosia of supremacy. Make me believe in you again. How do y'all feel about that? Yep.
Wow. I think Joelle's post like speaks so perfectly to the silence that was met to the question before, of like who's doing it, right? Because for me, this past week has been this constant like thought of like, I'm tired of explaining myself. Like I'm tired of having this conversation over and over again. So when an organization comes to me, when a predominantly white institution comes and says, "Oh my God, want to do this work. We love to, program more music or do whatever it is." Right? It's not to me about a task force. It's not about a diversity committee. Right? It's about an action. Right? Like I need you to do this without me. Right? Because we are tired and we've been doing this work for generations. And so to continuously be met with like, "Oh, we're working on it," or "We're trying," or "We're talking about it," it's like lives are being lost and we're still talking about it. Like I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Like I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead, Corey.
Oh, I was going to say, I think what's especially kind of heartbreaking about what happened with Breonna Taylor is I feel like for months and months and months, we've been seeing people kind of just playing in our faces. And I think what's especially egregious about her death is she's been memeified. She's been sold into merchandise. And it just kind of proved the point that, the most disrespected person is the Black woman. So that's why it's so important to think about how you're doing and what you want to do. Like, don't play in people's faces and do something just to get brownie points or to get sales and to like increase your popularity. Like, these are real lives that we're talking about, and you need to take it seriously and not make a joke about it. But I think that's what really hurt about it is we saw Breonna's face everywhere, yet there was no any type of justice.
Right. Kyle.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. I mean, Joel said so eloquently. He put into words the frustration and the hopelessness that we're all feeling. And I think with this ruling with Breonna Taylor, it just feels the same every single time, and the feeling is if we're just speaking another language. The fact that every single time that we try to make them see, it's met with this dismissive, this callousness, these are not isolated events. This is a disease and that frustration, that that sense that you're getting told that your life is meaningless, that it can be taken and no one will be asked to, no one will be held accountable. And
Yeah.
that frustration is, it's drugged up every single time that we hear about another black person that's been killed. And I think Joel said it in a really, really beautiful way here.
Yeah. Hmm. Obviously, there's nothing more. I can offer nothing more. But I think the piece about this, about Joel's post that stood out for me the most was, you will hold space for my indignation. Period. We're tired, we're exhausted, and this is, I mentioned earlier how we all find ourselves in very Eurocentric, in a Eurocentric art form, but also how it's reflected outward and how it really kind of echoes what the world is even. And so in saying that and speaking directly to America, I'm also speaking to the private white institutions that we have addressed, the well-meaning Todds and Karens and things like that. Like, you will hold space for my unsettledness. You will hold space for me to grieve and for me to experience this, because you won't stop. You have refused to stop. You've refused to listen, and we've been fighting for so long. So I think that really just kind of really stood out to me. Yeah. So we've come to the end of our concert tonight. I want to say thank you, but before I do that, I want to ask Corey if you could talk to us a little bit about Decomposed and the video that we're all about to watch.
Yeah, so Decompose, as we mentioned earlier, it's really an experience that's about, celebrating Black creativity and culture through the music of Black composers, but it's also our way of being in conversation with Black people. So all of our work is meant to resonate with our community and allow ourselves to kind of express just kind of Black creativity. So the beauty, can't talk right now. So the video you are about to see is our collaboration with 11 Black photographers across the country to the soundtrack of Sam Cooke's A Change Is Gonna Come. And the reason this collaboration was important, this sentiment has been echoed throughout the conversation, but as Nina Simone has said, as artists, it is our duty to reflect the time. So that's what this video allows us to do. But also it's really important, incredibly important for Black people to have the power to share their own stories. So the reason we were featuring Black photographers is when we think about the images and things that we are seeing in this moment, the way that the protest and everything is documented, those images can easily be sensationalized. So when we're seeing different images on the news, they might show fires or they might show looting. So by highlighting Black photographers, this is ensuring that we're protecting the protesters, we're protecting Black narratives. So featuring Black photographers was just incredibly intentional to make sure that we're telling these stories with care. You'll notice throughout each of the images is that we're highlighting this multi-generational aspect. So when you're seeing these different images, you should be able to see your brother, your sister, your aunt, and your uncle. That's really meant to highlight the magnitude and the impact of the protests. And the reason change is going to come is especially important is these are lives being put on the line just to protest. So whether it's the photographers or the people who are out here, they wouldn't be out here if they believed that their voices truly didn't matter. So that is our collaboration. That is what I want you to see. Also, it's very important and powerful when Black people work together. So this is the result of like 19 people kind of combining their talents to create this beautiful work of protest art. So I really hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you so much for contributing this. Did you want to say something, Yeli?
just because we brought him up earlier, I want to speak to not just the images that you're going to see, but the arrangement itself is written by Joelle Thompson, who wrote the quote that we all heard a few moments ago. And so even taking such an important work in Black music and have it reinterpreted by a Black composer, played by 4 Black people, is really important. And in our work together, when we were talking about the commission, he was saying, you know, I was going to write all these instructions, and then I remembered y'all are Black. It's like, exactly,
right.
You know, we know this song and we're going to play this song, but even how it means to like create art with your people, all the things that you don't have to say, and the ways that we're going to celebrate each other and bring nuance to things is really, really special, and was really special about this collaboration.
Yeah. Well, with that, I'm really looking forward to watching this video, but I just want to say thank you all so much for tuning into this live show. I hope that you enjoyed it thus far. Please like and follow Hearing in Color on social media. You can find in our comments, I'm sure, ways in which you can support the work that we do. Remember, you might not be a musician and you might not be a singer, but you know when the music is off. And in those moments, say something, do something, get into good and necessary trouble, y'all. All right. And with that, please enjoy Decomposed's arrangement of A Change Is Gonna Come.
When you talk about a revolution, most people think violence, without realizing that the real content of any kind of revolutionary thrust lies in the principles and the goals that you're striving for, not in the way you reach them. On the other hand, because of the way this society is organized, because of the violence that exists on the surface everywhere, you have to expect that there are going to be such explosions. You have to expect things like that as reactions.